He proposed to another woman on stage with the ring I found in our closet. After years of sacrifices, silence, and loving him through everything, he called her his soulmate. So I walked up and said, "You two deserve each other." Now his empire is collapsing. Me. I'm finally choosing someone who lets me speak and listens. I had ironed his shirt twice that morning. Not because it wasn't already crisp, but because Adrian liked it just so. Smooth across the shoulders, firm on the collar, never too much starch. I had learned the specifics over the years, like someone memorizing the quirks of a delicate machine. "Have you seen my cufflinks?" he called from the bedroom. "Top drawer, left side," I said, not looking up from my planner. "Next to your silver tie clip. You're wearing the navy, right?" He walked out in his undershirt, cufflinks in one hand, coffee in the other. "God, what would I do without you?" The line came easy to him now. Just a soundbite, one of many he used when I handled things that no one else saw. I nodded and smiled, even as I gently took the coffee from his hand before it spilled on his pants. "Maybe you'd set yourself on fire." He laughed. "You're dramatic." He had no idea. It was the morning of his campaign launch. Adrian Wolf was finally announcing his candidacy for state senator. The culmination of years of calculated networking, late-night strategy calls, and back-to-back fundraisers that sucked the oxygen out of every weekend. I had been there through all of it. Typing speeches at 2 a.m. on the floor beside his desk. Hosting donors in our shoebox apartment when we couldn't afford catered meals. Rewriting crisis statements when he said something too honest in interviews. And today I believed I would finally get to step into the light with him. Not as the supportive partner behind the scenes, but as the woman beside him. I didn't expect fireworks or a kneeling moment. We weren't that kind of couple. Adrian left things unspoken but deliberate. That morning when I stepped into the walk-in closet, I found a small navy box resting quietly on the top shelf of my makeup drawer. Inside it, a ring. Platinum. Oval cut. Understated and classic. The one I had once pointed at in a store window years ago, half joking, half hoping. No note. No explanation. Just the ring. I slipped it onto my finger slowly, stunned and breathless. This was it. His way of saying it's you. His way of proposing. In private, without an audience. Intimate. Quiet. I felt like something in me finally exhaled after holding its breath for years. The launch event was massive. The hotel ballroom buzzed with energy. Campaign volunteers checking sound systems, journalists unpacking cameras, aides whispering into earpieces. I stood in the back of the room, tucked behind the rows of press and donors. He told me I'd be watching from the floor, not on stage. "It's better optics," he'd said. "Let the policy take the spotlight today, not us." I'd agreed. Of course I had. Iris passed me in the hallway earlier, clipboard in hand, tailored suit flawless as always. "Great turnout," I said politely. She gave me a tight smile. "It's a big day." Her heels clicked away before I could say more. It was strange how Iris had gone from being a contractor to something more. She'd been hired 2 years ago to handle PR for Adrian's housing reform proposal. Somewhere between then and now, she had become his chief advisor. His right hand. His shadow. I used to like her. That was before she started finishing his sentences. Before she started answering his phone. Before I saw her name above mine in the campaign staff directory. The lights dimmed. Music swelled. The campaign manager stepped to the mic and began. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Please welcome the woman who helped craft the vision of this campaign. Our communications director, Iris Levin." Applause thundered as Iris took the stage, confident and poised, her voice cutting through the hum like she was born for it. "Today we don't just talk about change," she said. "We launch it. And there's one man who's ready to lead that change. A man with heart, integrity, and purpose." She turned slightly. "I give you Adrian Wolf." The crowd erupted. I clapped too, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the music. He stepped onto the stage looking every bit the polished candidate. Navy suit tailored to perfection, a calm practiced smile, the charm of a man used to cameras and applause. I knew him better than that smile. I had seen the panic attacks, the pacing, the crying, the guilt. But today he looked untouchable. "Thank you," he began. "Thank you truly." The room quieted. I never imagined I'd be standing here today. I wasn't born into this. I'm not the son of lobbyists or legacy donors. I'm the product of late rent, overdrawn accounts, and two parents who worked 3 jobs between them. Laughter. Warm. Relatable. I've had help along the way. People who believed in me, challenged me, stood by me. But there's one person I owe the most to. My breath caught. Here it comes. Adrian turned, eyes locking onto someone in the front row. Iris Levin, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You've been my compass. My strength. My closest confidant. I wouldn't be standing here without you. The room broke into applause. I didn't. The blood drained from my face. Did I hear that right? I waited for him to pivot, to say my name, to include me even in the smallest way. He didn't. He kept going. Kept talking about policies. About plans. About purpose. But not once, did he mention me. The woman he lived with. The woman who typed his speech. Before the applause. Before the woman standing in the front row where I was supposed to be. There was me. There was us. And none of it looked anything like what that ballroom saw today. We met in the basement library of Northgate University. Adrian was sitting on the floor in the law section, surrounded by 3 empty coffee cups and a pile of criminal procedure textbooks that looked like they could crush a man. He was furiously highlighting entire paragraphs, barely blinking, muttering case names under his breath. I was a sophomore working a shift at the circulation desk. He was a final-year law student who had somehow missed the do not annotate with neon green rule. When I walked over to gently scold him for defacing the university's property, he looked up, grinned, and said, "How else am I supposed to spot the injustice?" I laughed before I meant to. That was the thing about Adrian, he was effortlessly magnetic when he wasn't trying too hard. Back then his charm was unpolished, sincere. He believed in things even if he didn't know how to fight for them yet. We started seeing each other slowly. Coffee turned into study sessions. Study sessions turned into late-night sandwiches. One night, after walking me back to my dorm in the rain, he kissed me under the archway. My shoes were soaked, my socks squeaked, and I had never felt warmer in my life. He always said I made him believe in timing. I believed in hard work. When Adrian failed his first bar prep mock exam, he crumbled. I watched him spiral in that tiny studio apartment he shared with 2 roommates and a broken futon. So I picked up an extra tutoring gig. Then a barista shift. Then a weekend receptionist job. So he could study. So I could support us. I never asked for credit. I didn't want it. I just wanted him to make it. And he did. 3 years after passing the bar, Adrian Wolf was climbing faster than anyone expected. Public defender turned housing advocate. 1 viral interview later he had donors. Volunteers. Buzz. Then came Iris. I met her at a networking mixer. One of those wine and name tag evenings filled with the kind of people who use the word synergy with a straight face. She introduced herself as a strategic communications specialist. I introduced myself as Lily, Adrian's girlfriend. She smiled like that amused her. I offered to grab her a drink. She waved me off and floated toward Adrian like she already knew him. After that night her name started showing up everywhere. In meeting invites. On email CCs. On campaign drafts. I asked Adrian once, "Is she part of your team now?" He barely looked up from his laptop. "She's consulting. Just helping us shape the message." "Right," I said. "Just." I told myself not to be insecure. I had history. He had chosen me. But then came the missed dinners. The silences. The excuses. "Iris is just better at explaining the policy stuff," he said once after I'd corrected a mistake in his speech draft. Better at explaining. Eventually it was easier not to write the speeches at all. It was the donor gala that broke something in me. I had planned for weeks. I borrowed a red silk dress from Mira, my best friend from work. I booked a hair appointment I couldn't really afford. I even surprised Adrian at the event, hoping it would feel like old times. But when I arrived, Iris was already on his arm, wearing the exact same red dress. I froze in the doorway. They stood under the chandelier, speaking to one of Adrian's biggest donors. Iris laughed at something he said and placed her hand lightly on Adrian's sleeve. He didn't pull away. He didn't even look for me. When I finally made my way to him, I tapped him on the shoulder. He turned, eyes wide with confusion. "Lily," he said, blinking like he'd forgotten I existed. "You made it." "I told you I would," I said, my voice thin. "Oh, right." Iris gave me a once-over. Love your dress, she said sweetly. Great minds. Adrian chuckled. I didn't. Later in the car ride home I asked him plainly, do you think you should set clearer boundaries with her? He looked at me like I'd asked him to cut off his own arm. She's professional, he said. And you're reading into things. I'm not reading into anything, Adrian. I'm watching it happen. He sighed, rubbed the bridge of his nose. Lily, you've always been a little sensitive. I need you to trust me. Sensitive. It landed harder than it should have. Once I showed up to his office with lunch, Thai food from his favorite spot. I even brought the pickled chili oil he liked. Iris answered the door. Oh, she said, stepping aside. Didn't realize you'd be coming. It's Tuesday, I said. I always bring lunch on Tuesdays. She smiled. That's sweet. She didn't offer to call him. She didn't even invite me in. I stood there, pad thai going cold in my hands. And that was the moment I realized. She wasn't just helping run his campaign. She was rehearsing his future. After that, I tried harder. Cooked more. Complimented more. Asked less. I stopped pushing. I stopped pointing out inconsistencies. I stopped being me. And he seemed relieved. That's what haunts me the most. Still, despite all the warning signs, I stayed. Because I remembered him before the suits. Before the headlines. Before the machine swallowed him whole. I remembered him when he cried over rejection letters. When he told me I made him feel like he wasn't alone in the world. When he swore nothing, no one, could come between us. I held on to that man. I didn't realize he'd already left the room. Back at the campaign launch, I stared at him on stage, listening as he thanked everyone but me. The girl who believed in his second chance. The woman who supported his first run. The one who thought a silent ring on a shelf meant love. He looked out into the crowd and smiled. He reached into his coat pocket. And my heart stilled. I had seen that ring box this morning. Tucked in the corner of our closet. I'd stared at it for almost 10 minutes, hand hovering above it, not daring to touch. He hadn't said anything about it. Hadn't left a note. But he knew I'd find it. And I thought it was for me. For the girl who stayed. Who paid his phone bills during law school. Who stood next to him when his first campaign failed, who rebuilt him speech by speech. I thought it was a quiet promise. And now here he was, on stage in front of the donors I invited, the press I helped charm, reaching for that exact same box. He turned to Iris. No. Iris Levin, Adrian said into the mic, his voice steady, too steady. You've been my partner through every storm. The calm in every crisis. My compass. She gasped lightly. A little dramatic but perfect for the cameras. My stomach clenched. The walls of the ballroom seemed to close in around me. You've helped me find the version of myself I always wanted to be, he continued. And today I want to begin the next chapter of my life, with you. He opened the ring box. It was the same ring. Platinum. Oval cut. Quietly elegant. The one I'd once pointed out in a jewelry store window years ago when we were broken, stupid, and in love. She covered her mouth. The crowd rose to its feet. Applause thundered around me like static. This couldn't be real. Then I started walking. I didn't feel my feet move. I didn't hear the heels clicking. I didn't even feel the eyes, hundreds of them, turning toward me. But Adrian did. His smile dropped the second he saw me. I kept walking. Straight up the steps. Onto the stage. Into the center of the most humiliating moment of my life. The mic was still live. I stopped right between them. And for a moment, everything was quiet. Then slap. I slapped him. Hard. The sound echoed. Iris gasped. Adrian flinched, one hand flying to his cheek. Lily. Shut up, I said. My voice didn't tremble. It rang clear, even and deadly. What do you think of yourself? He opened his mouth. I cut him off. That ring, I said, pointing to the box still in his hand. I saw it this morning. In our closet. I thought it was for me. After everything I gave you, my time, my money, my faith. The crowd was silent now. No more applause. Just stunned faces blinking back disbelief. For 6 years I carried your dreams. You said you needed time. You said you weren't ready for public labels. You said I was overreacting every time I asked why she was always there. I turned to Iris. She looked pale now, her lips tight. You can keep him, I told her. You already took everything else. Lily, Adrian said again, stepping toward me. I stepped back. Don't. Don't you dare touch me. I felt the heat rise in my throat. I'm done fading. I'm done shrinking for a man who gaslighted me into thinking I was too emotional, too dramatic, too much, just so he could turn around and give her the life I built with you. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I turned back to Adrian. For the years you wasted, I said quietly, you deserve exactly this. Then louder to the whole room. You two deserve each other. And with that I stepped off the stage. No tears. No dramatic exit. Just finality. The crowd parted like water. No one tried to stop me. No one could. As I reached the exit I heard the mics cut off. Carl shouting something. Iris calling Adrian's name. But I didn't look back. I walked straight out of the ballroom into the hallway, past the cameras and whispers and perfectly polished PR teams trying to contain the chaos. Someone held a phone up to my face. I stared straight into the lens and said nothing. Because there was nothing left to say. The cool evening air outside hit like a slap of its own. It sobered me. Centered me. I pulled my coat tighter around myself and started walking. Not home. Not to him. Somewhere else. Anywhere else. My hands were still shaking when I turned the corner and ducked into an alley between buildings. Just enough space to breathe. My phone vibrated. 5 missed calls from Adrian. Then a text. Lily, please. It wasn't supposed to go like that. I turned off the screen. He never did know how things were supposed to go. That night I sat in my car for 2 full hours before starting the engine. Not crying. Not screaming. Just frozen. How do you grieve something that's already been dying for years? When I finally pulled into the driveway of the apartment we still technically shared, I saw that the light in the kitchen was on. I didn't go inside. I parked. Turned off the ignition. Then grabbed my overnight bag from the back seat and walked 3 blocks to Myra's place. She didn't ask questions. She just opened the door, handed me a mug of tea and pulled me into the kind of hug that doesn't require words. Later that night, when I was finally alone in her guest bedroom, I opened my texts again. There were more messages from Adrian. Paragraphs now. Apologies. Explanations. Justifications. I didn't reply. Because I was done explaining myself. Because I was done waiting to be chosen. Because the ring I saw in the closet this morning, the one I dreamed about, was never mine. It was just another lie in a box. I didn't go home that night. I stayed at Myra's, curled up on her couch in an oversized hoodie, half watching a rerun of a show we used to love before we both got too busy for comfort. She didn't ask questions. She didn't say I told you so. She didn't need to. She just brought me warm things. Socks, tea, silence, and stayed close like she knew I was barely stitched together. When I finally closed my eyes, all I could see was the ring box. An Iris. And Adrian on one knee, steady, unshaking like he'd rehearsed it. By noon the next day I knew I had to go back. Not for closure. Not for him. Just to pack. I took a cab. My hands wouldn't stop shaking the entire ride. My mind rehearsed what I'd say if he was there, then rehearsed what I'd do if he wasn't. Mostly I hoped he was gone. The doorman looked surprised when I walked in. His eyes darted toward the elevator. He's upstairs, he said. Of course he was. The apartment was dark when I stepped inside. Curtains still drawn from the night before. The air smelled stale. Too much cologne, too little truth. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I moved on autopilot. Suitcase, closet, drawers. The routines of ending something. The physical act of leaving. The first time I'd packed my own life into bags without knowing where it was going next. I was in the bedroom folding a sweatshirt he always stole from me when I heard the front door slam. Lily. Adrian's voice echoed down the hall. Too loud. Too slow. I didn't answer. He found me in the bedroom surrounded by piles of clothes and the aching sound of zippers. He was drunk. I could smell it, whiskey on his breath, cheap and sharp. His tie hung loose around his neck. The white shirt from last night was wrinkled, stained near the collar. You're really doing this, he said, arms outstretched. You're leaving. I looked at him, then down at the bag. I was already gone. I'm just collecting what's mine. Lily, he muttered, stepping toward me, swaying slightly. Come on, don't be dramatic. There was. The word that lived in every fight we ever had. Dramatic. Don't, I said quietly. He chuckled. Look, I made a mistake, okay? I should have said something. I should have talked to you first. But I didn't mean to hurt you. You proposed to someone else, I said, standing straight, clutching the zipper of my suitcase like it was a lifeline. With the ring I thought was for me. He flinched. I didn't plan that. I stared at him. You didn't plan to lie to me? Or you didn't plan to get caught? He moved forward again, hand outstretched. Lily, please. It was just the pressure. Everyone wanted me to. Don't, I said again, firmer. Don't make this about everyone. You did this. You chose her. I chose the campaign, he snapped. And there was the truth, raw and ugly. He didn't love Iris. He didn't even love me. He loved the version of himself he could sell when he had the right woman standing beside him. I gave you everything, I said. My voice shook for the first time. I made you my future. And I didn't ask for that, he exploded. You decided that. You took over. You planned everything and expected me to follow. I took a step back. He kept going. You were supposed to support me, Lily. Not suffocate me. My chest tightened. You don't love me, I whispered. You love the way I fade for you. He froze. And then, like a dam breaking, he lunged forward and grabbed my wrist. Hard. Too hard. I gasped, instinctively trying to pull back, but he held on tighter. His face twisted, not in rage but in desperation. Don't leave, he said. Don't make this worse. His fingers dug into my skin. Let me go, I said, voice rising. Lily. Let go. I yanked my arm free, stumbling back, my breath shallow. We stood in silence. Just the sound of our breathing and the slow collapse of what we used to be. I looked down at my wrist, already red, swelling in the shape of his fingers. This, I said coldly, is the last time. He blinked. I'm not yours anymore, Adrian. I don't know who I ever was to you, but it wasn't love. And I won't mistake it again. He looked like he wanted to speak, but I was already turning. I zipped the suitcase. I picked up the tote I had set by the door. And I walked out. He didn't follow. I took the elevator down. The doorman didn't say anything, but I saw his eyes flick to my wrist. I left anyway. That night I slept on Myra's couch again. She made me tea and passed me an ice pack for my arm without a word. He's lucky, she said once, gently pressing it to the bruised skin. That all you did was leave. The next morning I opened my apartment door to find a man crouched in the hallway, adjusting a toolbox. Slightly tousled hair. Dark gray scrubs beneath a fleece jacket. A coffee in one hand, keys in the other. Sorry, he said, standing up. Didn't mean to block the door. He smiled. The kind that was soft around the edges. Not rehearsed. New neighbor? I asked. He shook his head. Nope. Just one of the invisible ones. I'm Julian. Across the hall. Lily, I said. He nodded, then looked down at my wrist. That looks fresh. I instinctively pulled my sleeve down. I bumped into something. He raised an eyebrow. Didn't press. I'm an ER doc, he said, voice quiet. So, if it starts swelling more or you notice bruising, just knock. I nodded. Thanks. He didn't linger. Didn't ask. Just handed me the coffee he was holding. This one's an extra. Wrong order. You look like you need it more than I do. And with that he disappeared into his apartment. I stood there for a long time holding that cup like it was something sacred. It wasn't the coffee that made my throat tighten. It was that, for the first time in years, someone noticed I was hurting. And didn't try to make it my fault. I didn't expect to see him again so soon. Julian, the ER doctor from across the hall. The man who handed me a lukewarm coffee and didn't try to ask me anything when I was visibly falling apart. The man with kind eyes and a quiet voice who saw my bruised wrist and didn't flinch. It had been 4 days since the launch. 4 days since I left Adrian, since I stopped checking my phone, since I turned into a ghost in my own life. I hadn't cried. Not once. There was something deeply terrifying about that. As if my body had run out of grief. Or maybe, after 6 years of swallowing everything whole, there was nothing left inside me that could rise to the surface. Mira was the one who suggested the clinic. You need structure, she said, placing a stack of toast and peanut butter in front of me. Something to do that doesn't involve doom scrolling or rereading hate comments. I'm not reading hate comments, I said quietly. He gave me a look. I winced. Fine. Just the quote tweets. She clicked her tongue and slid a flyer across the table. A volunteer posting. Bilingual preferred. Admin support for a community health center that helped uninsured families. You're fluent in Mandarin and trauma, she said. Go. I showed up the next morning with a headache, a barely ironed shirt and no expectations. I didn't know I'd see Julian again. He was standing behind the front desk reviewing intake forms with a nurse. He looked up just as I walked in. His expression flickered, surprise then something softer. Morning, he said. I blinked. You run this place? Co-director, he said. But the coffee machine breaks so often you'd never know. Pause. I didn't know you'd be here, he added. Not that I mind. I didn't either, I said. My friend made me. Smart friend. He handed me a clipboard and gently walked me through the forms. Not once did he mention my wrist. Not once did he mention the press conference, the clip that had gone viral of me slapping Adrian on live television, or the headlines that called me bitter, unstable, jealous. He just pointed to the filing cabinet and said, if it sticks, don't force it. It's already seen better days. And somehow I felt like I could breathe again. By the end of the week I was volunteering full days. Answering phones. Translating forms. Scheduling appointments. No one recognized me here. No one cared about what I used to be to someone else. Here I was just Lily. And for once that was enough. Julian kept his distance but not coldly. He'd offer a second cup of coffee mid-afternoon. Drop off a granola bar on my desk when he saw I hadn't eaten. Once, when I left a meeting visibly shaken from a patient's story, he didn't say anything, just handed me a tissue and sat across from me silently. That was the thing about Julian. He never tried to fix me. He just stayed. On Friday afternoon I opened my phone for the first time in days and saw the email. From Adrian Wolf Campaign. Subject. A note from Adrian. We want to address recent public speculation with honesty and respect. Lily Zhao is a valued friend who has supported Adrian over the years. Any personal misunderstandings are private matters. We ask the public to offer compassion to everyone involved. A valued friend. My jaw clenched. There was a photo embedded in the email. Iris beside Adrian, the ring on her finger catching the light. Captioned, the future looks brighter with a strong team. No mention of the fact that he'd given that same ring to me. No mention of the years we lived together. No mention of the fact that I built half that team from scratch. Just a rewrite. A clean version of events. The version where I was never really there. That night I stood outside his townhouse. I didn't come for closure. I didn't come for a fight. I came because I was done letting someone else narrate my life. The porch lights were on. 2 luxury cars in the driveway. I knocked twice. The door opened. And there she was. Iris. Wearing one of my sweaters. I stared at it, gray, loose-fitting with tiny threads near the cuffs where I used to roll them nervously during long meetings. Lily, she said, blinking like she hadn't expected me. What are you? Is Adrian home? I asked. She hesitated. He's resting. I'll be brief. She stepped aside. I walked in. The house hadn't changed. Same furniture. Same candles. But it smelled like her perfume now. Floral, sharp, manufactured. Adrian appeared at the top of the stairs, barefoot, hair damp. Lily, he said, voice wary. I got your email, I said. He nodded slowly. I thought it was the best way to calm things down. You mean erase me publicly while pretending to be gracious? I didn't erase you. You replaced me, I said, stepping closer. You took everything we built and handed it to someone else, then rewrote the story so it looked like I was never there. That's not fair. Neither was giving her the ring. His face tensed. I'm not here to argue, I continued. I'm here to tell you this. You don't get to call me a friend just because it's convenient. You don't get to minimize me because it fits your narrative. He didn't reply. You said I was too emotional, I added. You called me dramatic when I asked you to set boundaries. You told me Iris was just part of the team. I turned toward Iris, who was standing quietly near the kitchen. Tell me, when exactly did you stop pretending she wasn't the plan all along? She didn't answer. I looked back at him. This is the last time you get to frame my silence as agreement. I'm done being polite about being erased. He opened his mouth, but I was already walking away. And this time I didn't wait for the door to close behind me. The next morning at the clinic I arrived early. Julian was already there sipping tea at the reception desk reviewing charts. He glanced up as I walked in. "You okay?" he asked softly. I sat down across from him. He slid a paper cup toward me. I took it. It was hot chocolate. "Not coffee." I said. "But now I think I'm getting there." He gave a small nod and returned to his clipboard. No advice. No commentary. No interruption. Just space. And for the first time in weeks I felt myself settle into it. I wasn't even watching the debate. It was just playing in the clinic's break room, volume low, subtitles on. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly. The admin desk was quiet. One phone ringing, a printer stuttering to life. Julian had stepped out for a home visit. I was sorting through patient files, mechanically clicking through intake forms, my brain somewhere else. Then I heard my name. Not out loud, in my head. Because the story Adrian was telling on that screen didn't include me. But it was about me. I looked up just as the moderator asked, "What made you choose public service over private law?" Adrian smiled, perfectly calibrated for the camera. People assume it was about money or fame. But it was more personal. One night in 2019, after a brutal housing hearing, I felt defeated. I was ready to give up. My fingers froze above the keyboard. "I called someone who reminded me who I was," he continued. "She told me that maybe we weren't meant to fix everything. Maybe we were meant to stand in the fire until others didn't have to." The quote landed like a punch to my chest. As I had said that to him, on our old couch in our shared apartment, while eating takeout with our knees touching and his head resting on my shoulder. He was shattered that night. Burnt out. Angry. And I was the one who pulled him back. Now he was giving that moment to Iris. "She showed me how to lead," he finished, nodding toward her, seated in the front row, lips painted in a safe, elegant shade of rose. Iris smiled gracefully for the camera. And I sat there in the break room, still in my ID badge and clinic scrubs, watching the love story I had lived get repackaged without me. He didn't forget. He had rewritten it. I stared at the screen until the subtitles blurred. Until the room felt too loud and too quiet all at once. Until the air in my lungs no longer felt like mine. I stood up. "Hey Lily, are you?" the receptionist started. "I'll be back," I said quickly, grabbing my coat. I didn't wait for Julian. I didn't text Mira. I just walked. Fast. Hard. Like if I kept moving I could outrun the feeling building in my chest. The first raindrops hit just as I reached the park. It was nearly empty. Just a couple walking a dog and a teenager on a skateboard. I sank down onto a bench beneath a bare tree and let the silence settle around me. No umbrella. No hood. Just me. And the weight of being erased. It wasn't just the lie. It was the choice. He had taken a moment that was ours. Intimate, messy, real, and stripped it of everything true. He handed it to Iris like it belonged to her all along. I wasn't even angry. Not at first. I just felt hollow. Like I'd been walking around with a ghost in my chest and only now realized it had a name. I didn't hear the footsteps. Didn't register the presence beside me until a voice said, "Hey, Julian." He was holding 2 coffees. One in each hand. No coat. Just scrubs and his usual calm. "I saw you leave," he said. "Didn't feel right to let you be alone." I didn't look at him. My eyes were on the ground. I didn't expect it to hurt this much. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. "I thought I was done with him," I whispered. "I thought walking away meant I couldn't be hurt anymore." Julian didn't speak. I let the silence stretch. "I was there for all of it," I said. "The exhaustion. The defeats. The nights he said he couldn't do this anymore. I stayed. I held space. And now, he tells the world that she was the reason he found his voice." I let out a shaky laugh. He took the one thing I had left, the story of us, and made it hers. He placed the coffee beside me on the bench. Then he just sat. Not touching. Not comforting in the way most people rush to do. He just anchored himself there like a lighthouse, steady and unblinking. "You don't have to say anything," I mumbled. "I know," he said. More silence. The good kind. The kind that says, "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." "Do you ever feel like you disappeared while standing right in front of someone?" I asked. Julian turned to me. "Yes. But you didn't disappear, Lily." He just stopped looking. I blinked. He added, "It doesn't make you invisible. It makes him blind." I looked at him fully then. And for the first time in days, in weeks, I felt my chest ease. Not because it didn't hurt anymore, but because someone had finally seen me in the wreckage and didn't ask me to tidy it up. He picked up his coffee and took a sip. "I'm sorry, I don't have better advice," he said. I shook my head. "This is better than advice." He smiled. "Good. Because I'm terrible at it." We sat there as the rain tapered off, clouds rolling slow above us. And somewhere between the silence, the steam rising from cheap coffee lids, and the weight of the truth finally named, I realized I wasn't broken. Just finally unburied. I didn't want a big place. Not anymore. The apartment I chose sat on the third floor of a quiet street that smelled like jasmine and wet concrete. It had squeaky floorboards, a stubborn front door, and a tiny balcony that overlooked an old fig tree leaning into someone else's yard. But it had light. So much light. It spilled through the windows every morning like forgiveness, golden and unapologetic. And that, I thought, was enough. I painted the walls a warm cream. Bought furniture secondhand, one chipped mug and wobbly nightstand at a time. I picked yellow curtains because they reminded me of something that had nothing to do with Adrian. They reminded me of summer mornings in my childhood, of sunlit peace, of choosing brightness even on days I didn't feel it. For once, I wasn't designing a life that needed to impress anyone. I was just building a home for myself. One afternoon, while unpacking a box labeled miscellaneous, I found it. Folded between an old photo album and a cracked snow globe from a forgotten vacation. The scarf. I had knitted it years ago. A gift for Adrian. It was a deep navy blue, the color he always said made him look trustworthy but expensive. I had finished it the week before our anniversary. I was going to surprise him. But the night I planned to give it, he showed up late, smelling like champagne and campaign stress, saying he forgot we had dinner plans. So I kept the scarf. And eventually I stopped knitting. Now I held it in my hands, running my fingers over the uneven stitches. Some rows were too tight. Some too loose. It was imperfect and soft and mine. I didn't cry. I just folded it back up and placed it in the donation bin. Some things weren't meant to be repurposed. Julian knocked on my door 2 days later. Not with coffee. With plants. A rubber fig and a tiny pot of thyme. "For your windowsill," he said, pushing his shoulder into the doorframe like he belonged there. "You know most people bring wine as a housewarming gift," I said, smiling. "I'm not most people," he said, handing me the pots. "And you're more of a tea and plants kind of person anyway." I blinked. "How do you know that?" He shrugged. "You keep 3 kinds of honey at the clinic and hum while watering succulents." I didn't realize I did either of those things until he said it. We placed the plants on the windowsill together. The thyme immediately leaned toward the sun. Like it knew. We grew into each other the way people do when there's no pressure, no expectation, just shared space and soft laughter. At the clinic we developed rhythms. He'd place a cup of ginger tea on my desk without a word. I'd leave sticky notes with cartoon smiley faces on his charts. We'd stay after hours to finish paperwork, our knees brushing beneath the table, pretending we didn't notice. One night, while reorganizing the supply closet, we bumped heads reaching for the same clipboard. I laughed so hard I dropped a box of latex gloves. They rained down around us like petals. He looked at me, really looked, and said, "You laugh like you've just remembered something important." Maybe I had. Maybe I remembered what it felt like to be seen. Not as someone's support system or political asset. Lily. He didn't ask me out. He asked me to meet his mother. It was casual in the way nothing casual ever really is. "Family dinner," he said one night, balancing a tray of takeout containers in the clinic kitchen. "My mom insists on meeting the woman who leaves reminder notes in my lab coat." I froze. "You told her about me?" "Of course I did," he said like it was obvious. "You're my favorite part of the week." I didn't answer. I just nodded, heart thudding in a way that felt both foreign and familiar. Her name was Renata. She wore lemon-scented hand cream and a gold locket with a photo of Julian as a child. The moment I stepped into her small but immaculate apartment, she wrapped me in a hug that lasted 2 full heartbeats longer than I expected. "You're Lily," she said. "I've been waiting a long time to meet you." I blinked. How?" She smiled. "Julian only talks about 2 things, community healthcare, and the girl who makes his coffee taste better just by sitting next to him. I flushed. He groaned. Mom. What? She said innocently, ushering me inside. It's true. Dinner was noodles with vegetables and laughter so warm it steamed up the kitchen windows. She asked about my favorite books, my worst dates, my opinions on cilantro. And at one point, when Julian left the room to get dessert, she reached for my hand. I don't know what you've been through, she said softly, but I know what it feels like to come home to yourself after being lost in someone else. I looked at her surprised. He wears the kind of heartbreak you can't fix, she continued gently. But I see light in him now. The kind that only shows up when someone's being held kindly. I didn't speak. I just squeezed her hand in return. That night when Julian dropped me home, he didn't walk me to the door. He just leaned over from the driver's seat and said, "You make hard things feel soft." And left. No kiss. No confessions. Just presence. Just light. Just enough. Later I stood in my living room, bathed in the golden spill of streetlights through my yellow curtains. And I smiled. Because it finally felt like mine. Because for the first time in years I didn't feel like I was waiting to be loved. I was already surrounded by it. In small pots of time. In laughter with dinner. In silence beside someone who stayed. And that, I realized, was more than enough. It started quietly. A donor withdrew a sponsorship. A venue canceled last minute. A whisper of impropriety leaked into a political blog. Nothing proven but sticky enough to stain. At first I ignored the headlines. I had learned, painfully, that watching Adrian fall wasn't the same as healing. I didn't want revenge. I wanted air. Space. A life with windows that opened and plants that didn't die under fluorescent lights. But then Mira texted me a link one morning at the clinic. Adrian Wolf's campaign in free fall. Top PR strategist Iris Lee resigns, joins rival firm. Underneath, a photo of Iris, red-lipped, composed, flanked by her new employer. Adrian stood alone at a press podium in another tab, looking paler than usual. Hollow-eyed. It hit me then. I had kept it all together. Not the press releases or the donors. Not the strategy or the visuals. Me. My belief. My presence. My quiet labor. I was the gravity in his universe, and without me the stars scattered. He showed up on a Tuesday. It was raining again, that thin kind of rain that doesn't soak you, just lingers. I was walking up the steps to the clinic when I heard my name. Lily. I turned. He was standing there. No umbrella. Suit soaked. Eyes wild in a way I'd only seen once. The night before his first public debate. The night I'd held his trembling hands and said, "You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be real." This time I said nothing. "I need to talk to you," he said, stepping closer. "You shouldn't be here." "Please," he said. "Just, please." I let him speak. Only because I needed to hear how far he'd fall. We sat inside the clinic's back hallway, out of the way of patients and staff. I stayed standing. He didn't. He sank into the bench like his legs couldn't hold him anymore. "Iris is gone," he said. "I know. She leaked strategy files. Joined Martin's firm. Half our donors are following her." I said nothing. "I can't fix it, Lily. I'm trying, but..." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. He looked up. "Because I still love you." The words fell flat. Too rehearsed. Too late. "I was stupid," he continued. "I thought I needed someone who fit the image. Someone who looked the part. But I needed you." I crossed my arms. "Everything's falling apart," he said, desperate now. "And all I can think about is how it wouldn't be like this if you were still by my side." I gave a bitter laugh. "Oh. So now that everything's falling apart, you came back to me." "Lily." "No," I cut in. "Don't you have any shame left?" He blinked, startled. "You erased me, Adrian. You didn't just lie. You rewrote our story and handed my life to someone else. For optics. For applause. And now you're here because no one else stayed." He stood up, reached for me. "I was wrong. I'm sorry." And then he knelt. Right there on the clinic floor, soaked shoes squeaking against linoleum. "I'm begging you," he said. "Please. I need you." I stared at him. And for the first time I felt nothing. No anger. No yearning. No ache. Just the quiet relief of distance. I turned. and walked away. No final words. No dramatic exit. Just my back to him. Steady. Certain. Julian found me hours later. I was sitting in the break room staring at the same mug I'd used every morning for 2 months. Was it him? He asked gently. I nodded. He didn't ask what Adrian said. He didn't need to. He just passed me a warm towel, for my wet hair not my heart, and sat beside me. He knelt, I said finally. Julian raised an eyebrow. Did you slap him again? I laughed. For real this time? No, I said. I just walked away. He nodded like that made perfect sense. And then he said, good. Later that evening at home I stood by the window and watched the rain wash the streets clean. I thought about how long I had begged for closure, for him to acknowledge the damage, the loss, the betrayal. And when he finally did, I didn't need it anymore. He was right about one thing, he had needed me. But I had never needed him. I just hadn't known that until I left. It was a Wednesday when the words finally spilled out. Nothing special about the day. No storm, no drama, no trigger. Just an ordinary evening with chamomile tea steeping in mismatched mugs and Julian sitting across from me on my couch like he always did, grounded, quiet, unshakably there. I'd lit the candles. Not because I needed the ambience but because I liked the way the soft light flickered against the yellow curtains. It made the space feel warm. Like safety had shape now. Julian was reading a file, brow furrowed in the way it always did when something bothered him, but he wouldn't say it aloud. I watched him for a while. Then I said, do you want to know something strange? He looked up. Always. I hesitated, fingers tracing the rim of my cup. I used to be afraid of the quiet. Thought it meant people were mad at me. That something was wrong. He set the file aside and leaned in just slightly. Why? I shrugged. Maybe because the silence at home always came before yelling. Or doors slamming. Or my dad leaving for another 3 days and my mom blaming me for the weather. His face didn't change. No wince. No pity. Just attention. Kept going. I learned early that being quiet wasn't safe. So I became useful instead. The fixer. The helper. The one who didn't need much. If I could stay helpful, I could stay needed. And if I was needed, maybe I couldn't be left. Julian didn't say anything. Just waited. I did the same with Adrian, I admitted. I carved myself smaller every year to fit the shape he needed. And when I started asking for space, for acknowledgement, he called it selfish. I took a breath, the words trembling now. But I wasn't asking to be worshipped. I was just asking not to disappear. Till he said nothing. And because he didn't interrupt, because he gave me that silence without fear, I kept going. I used to want a lot from love. Fireworks. Passion. The kind of chaos people write poems about. But now I think I just want someone who sees me. Even when I'm not trying to be seen. My voice cracked just a little. Julian moved then, just enough to bridge the space between us. Not to grab or hold, but simply to be closer. His knee brushed mine. I see you, he said gently. I believed him. Because he didn't say it to fill the silence. He said it like he'd been seeing me for a long time. We sat there like that. For a while. No music. No drama. Just the hum of the city and our shared breath between sips of tea. And then softly he added, you've always made space for others. He turned toward me fully. Let me make some for you now. He didn't lean in like a movie scene. He just waited. And I kissed him. Slow. Quiet. Not fireworks. Not chaos. Just stillness. Just presence. His hand found the back of my neck like he already knew the shape of me. My fingers curled into his shirt without fear. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. This okay? He asked. I smiled. For the first time in my life, I whispered, this feels like it's not about being needed. It's just about being wanted. Later we lay side by side on the couch, his arm draped over mine, my head on his chest. Did you ever want to be something else? I asked. Julian considered it. I used to want to be invisible. I looked up at him, surprised. When I was a kid, he said. I thought if people couldn't see me, they couldn't hurt me. What changed? You. My breath caught. You taught me that being seen isn't dangerous, he said. It's sacred. We lay in that silence. Not the kind I feared, but the kind I had been searching for my whole life. The kind that cradled. The kind that healed. Love doesn't have to be loud to be true. That was the thought I carried into sleep. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't wake up anxious. I just woke up whole. It was a crisp afternoon in March when the campaign finally crumbled. I didn't read the headlines right away. Mira sent the link in all caps with a single word. Boom. But I let the article sit unopened for hours. I already knew what it would say. Whispers had been building for weeks. Quiet resignations, postponed events, donors backing out faster than they came in. Still, when I finally clicked, the headline was harsher than I expected. Iris Lee leaked campaign files in exchange for consulting stake. Adrian Wolf faces legal scrutiny. Below it, a photo of Adrian looking stunned, his mouth slightly open like he hadn't prepared for the fall. Almost felt bad. Almost. Later that day, a reporter somehow found me outside the clinic. "Miss Harrow," she called, breathless. "Do you have a comment on the Wolf campaign collapse?" I turned to her, calm. "That chapter is closed," I said. "Good luck with your story." And then I walked back inside. Because no matter how many eyes were watching, I had nothing left to say to a man who had written me out of his life until it was falling apart. The letter came a week later. No name on the front. Just my address, handwritten in careful, familiar script. Inside, no pleas. No bargaining. Just a quiet, single-page apology. "I see now what I never had the courage to admit. You were the only part of me that was real." He didn't ask for a second chance. He didn't ask for anything. I folded the letter once, walked to the kitchen and dropped it in the flame of the stove. I watched it burn, clean and silent. And when it was gone, I made myself tea. That evening, I was still in my clinic office when Julian knocked. He carried 2 mugs. One with the chipped blue rim I always used. "Chamomile and a cinnamon stick," he said. "You had a press ambush today. Figured you earned it." I laughed softly. "You really do keep showing up at all the right moments." "That's because I never left." He set the mug on my desk and sat across from me, watching me sip like it was a ceremony. Kind of was. Quiet comfort. Warm routine. No noise. Just us. I walked over to the coat rack, reached up to the top shelf and pulled it down. The scarf. The deep navy one I had once knitted for a man who didn't notice it. I walked back to Julian and wrapped it around his neck gently, tugging the ends just enough to make him lean forward. "There," I said. "Now it's where it belongs." He tilted his head. "On my neck." "No," I said. "On someone who sees me." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled. "You want to know what I see right now?" I raised an eyebrow. "If you say, a future, I might throw tea at you." He grinned. "No. I see a woman who doesn't flinch anymore." He leaned in closer, voice low. "And a woman who makes cinnamon tea feel like poetry." I kissed him then. No hesitation. Soft at first, the kind of kiss you give when you're still surprised it's real. Then deeper, slower. His hands on my waist, mine tangled in that scarf. Both of us laughing softly between moments like we couldn't believe how far we'd come. Later we lay curled together on the clinic couch, legs tangled, the scarf still around his neck and his fingers tracing circles on my arm. "I used to think love was something you had to earn," I said quietly. "With sacrifice. With silence. With shrinking." He kissed my temple. "Not anymore." I shook my head. "Now I think love is just what's left when you stop proving your worth to someone who never saw it in the first place." He nodded against my hair. "You don't have to prove anything to me." I smiled, closing my eyes. "I know." That night I looked in the mirror before bed. No makeup. No jewelry. Hair messy. Smile soft. And for the first time in my life I didn't check for flaws. I just looked. And the mirror didn't lie. Because this time, I didn't have to shrink to be loved. I just had to show up. The end.